Almost a quarter of a century ago, the sociologist Robert Putnam wrote about the increasing social isolation and alienation of Americans from their friends, families, and communities in a book titled Bowling Alone. He connected the decline of bowling leagues to this concerning phenomenon, and also commented about television as a factor in this heightened isolation. He wrote, "People watch friends on TV, they don't have them." Around that same time, it seemed that the internet might provide an answer to increased disconnection in our society. We had not only seemingly leveled up from written letters and pen pals to email, but we had chat rooms, instant messaging, and blogs. Our in-person friendships and relationships could gain a new layer of interaction, and we were finding new ways of connecting with people we might never have met otherwise. The world was truly at our fingertips. It seemed that the walls between us might come tumbling down, and the internet might help us rebuild our society's social fabric. Elements of that hope have indeed come true. There are meaningful connections and even support to be found online. Those suffering from diseases or serving as caretakers for loved ones can find others who have knowledge and experience and can offer empathy and advice. Online learning opportunities abound in which you can indeed get to know classmates at least a bit over Zoom. Online dating apps can and sometimes do lead to real in-person relationships and love and even marriage. Nonetheless, mediating our lives through the internet and our devices in the name of expediency and convenience makes it all too easy to pass an entire day or even much of our time without speaking to another human being, especially if we live alone or work remotely or both. We choose self-checkout at the store. We order our groceries via Instacart. We DoorDash and Grubhub our takeout meals, request the appointment through the online portal, and text rather than calling. And now we can even avoid chatting with our Uber driver by ordering a driverless Waymo ride. Taken individually, none of these are wrong or even detrimental. In fact, for the introverts among us, or for those with social anxiety, or in moments of great busyness when we are utterly strapped for time, these conveniences can be a godsend. Yet the question remains, what are we giving up? I recently listened to a podcast that crystallized for me the challenge of finding meaningful connection in the time we're living in. Esther Perel is a psychotherapist and relationship expert, and she was the guest on a podcast that reflected on the expanded global reach and scope we can have in this age of the internet and AI versus the small circles in which we used to find ourselves only a couple generations ago. Esther Perel commented, "The bigger things go, the more people are looking for something that's actually nurturing. In my world," she continued, "the other AI is the rise of artificial intimacy." I want to repeat that. The other AI is the rise of artificial intimacy. Perel continued, "Artificial intimacy is all the experiences we currently have that are pseudo-experiences. They should give us the feeling of something real, but they don't. I can have 1,000 virtual friends, but nobody to feed my cat. Nobody to ask to go and pick up a prescription at the pharmacy. And that's a different kind of loneliness. It's not about being physically alone. It's about being unseen." In so many ways, we're living in the future with more potential opportunities for connection than ever. And yet so many of us are profoundly alone. And not just alone, but lonely. A 2021 study found that 12% of Americans reported that they had no friends, up from just 3% in 1990. Americans now spend 70% less time in person with friends than we did 2 decades ago. In the last 20 years, time spent engaging in person with friends decreased from 30 hours to 10 hours per month on average. And one particularly surprising fact is that younger adults ages 18 to 24 report greater feelings of loneliness than older adults above 70 years old. Loneliness and social isolation are not only unpleasant, not only heart-wrenching at times, but they have a deep impact on our health. Studies show that lacking social connection puts a person at about the same risk of early mortality as smoking 15 cigarettes a day, and it's a greater risk factor than drinking 6 alcoholic drinks a day, physical inactivity, or obesity. Those with poor social relationships face a 29% increase in risk for heart disease and a 32% increase for stroke. And there are similar links with hypertension, diabetes, and dementia. While the crisis of social isolation has been exacerbated in recent years, so much so that U.S. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy has termed it a loneliness epidemic, loneliness is not a new creation. It's a universal human experience to, at times, feel lonely, something that at some point we've all experienced, and which the novelist Thomas Wolfe called a central and inevitable fact of human existence. And in fact, our tradition recalls loneliness as the very first human experience. There are only 2 times, only 2 in our Torah when we are told that something is lo tov, not good. The first occurs during the very first chapters of the Torah, which describe the creation of the world. 7 times during the story of the creation, as God speaks the world into being, we read the word tov, good. Then we turn to the story of the first human, Adam, who is placed in the Garden of Eden. He is surrounded by the beauty of creation and all the animals, and yet something is not right. God declares, Lo tov heyot adam levado. It is not good, lo tov, for a person to be alone. It isn't good to be alone. Goodness is found in relationship and camaraderie. Even a miracle such as the Garden of Eden in the first days of creation is not good, not paradise if we have no one to share it with. The nothingness of isolation is not good. Intimacy, camaraderie, and sharing life together is good. It is, as C.S. Lewis put it, friendship is unnecessary, like philosophy, like art, like the universe itself, for God did not need to create. It has no survival value. Rather, it is one of those things which give value to survival. Therefore, the very first act that God does for humanity is to assuage our loneliness. God answers Adam's loneliness by giving the human an ezer kenegdo. This is sometimes translated as a helpmate or a helper opposite him. I would translate this rather as a helper facing him. In response to our existential loneliness, we are given another person, someone who sees us, acknowledges us face to face. The second time in our Torah that we hear that something is lo tov, not good, comes in the book of Exodus. After the escape from Egypt, Moses is navigating, leading the hundreds of thousands of Israelites who moments before were just slaves, as they work on navigating their newfound freedom in community. Moses' beloved father-in-law, Jethro, comes to meet the Israelites there in the wilderness, and he witnesses Moses adjudicating among the Israelites, listening to their troubles and settling their disputes from sunrise until sunset. Concerned, Jethro guides Moses, saying, "The thing you are doing is not good, lo tov. For the task is too heavy for you. You cannot bear the burden alone. Whether the task we have is to settle disputes from dawn until dusk, or to work full-time and still actively raise our kids with care, to care for aging partners or parents, to weather our own health challenges, or to advocate for needed change in our society, let Jethro's words affirm what we know deep in our kishkas. The task is too heavy for just one person to carry. You are not meant to bear your burdens alone. Our tradition drives this home with a consistent orientation toward relationship and the importance of presence in community. We're not meant to mourn in solitude, so the Kaddish requires a minyan of at least 9 others joining you. Joy is not fully experienced unless it is shared, so a ketubah, a marriage contract, requires witnesses. And to drive home the importance of presence, even when it's tough, even when we might not know exactly what to say, attending a funeral and making a shiva visit are considered among the highest mitzvot. And the Mishnah teaches that when you visit someone at the sickbed, the very presence of God accompanies you to the bedside. Even study, which we might think of as a solitary activity, is instead relational. The default and most encouraged way of study in Judaism is in chavruta. Today we call this a study partner, but the root of chavruta is friendship, chaver, friend. From its most ancient days, our tradition has recognized what sociologist Brené Brown notes in our own day. We are psychologically, emotionally, cognitively, and spiritually hardwired for connection, love, and belonging. These are irreducible needs of all people. It's what gives purpose and meaning to our lives. As we step into this new year, I invite each of us to actively take steps to alleviate our own loneliness and to help others around us to do the same. The very good news is that taking small steps can make a meaningful difference in our happiness and fulfillment, in our ability to build real connections with others, and in the degree to which we can decrease the loneliness of those around us and in our community. Orienting ourselves towards seeking new friendships might be a paradigm shift within our society, but it only takes a few minutes a day. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy calls these small steps medicine hiding in plain sight. Now, it can be hard in our polished Instagram age to embrace the possible awkwardness of early interactions, or to trying to go deeper into friendship or inviting someone into our home. My call to you this year is, do it anyway. It may not be easy or comfortable at first, but it will be worth it. Say hello to the person sitting a few seats away from you at the parent meeting at school or here in the sanctuary. Invite someone over, even if your house is not perfectly tidy. It'll probably make them feel better about their own. Don't just wave to your neighbor as you take the trash to the curb. Actually say a real hello and have a brief conversation. Will every interaction lead to a new dearest friend? No, but some will lead to new relationships and connections, and that will be worth it. Perhaps you have friends, even many friends, who you enjoy spending time with, but maybe you don't often really share deeply with them about what troubles you, your fear about possible layoffs, the grief you still carry over a loss experienced months or even years ago, the exhaustion and loss of identity in caring for babies and toddlers when society claims you should be over the moon at all times. This year, when someone asks how you are doing, I'm calling on you to try to share how you're really doing, even if it isn't happy, even when it's tough. Recall Jethro's words to Moses in the book of Exodus. It is too heavy for you. You cannot bear the burden alone. And if you're someone who worries about being a burden to others if you share what weighs on you, as I know so many worry, remember the adage, joy shared is double joy, sorrow shared is lessened by half. One further way we can push back on our loneliness is to spend an hour or two volunteering and helping others, whether that's reading with kids in public schools who need literacy support, becoming a volunteer with our Shalom Center, calling and visiting folks often unable to leave their homes, or joining a group writing postcards or canvassing for the upcoming election. What better way to connect with others and emerge from our own lonely bubble than to do a mitzvah and ask, how can I help? Finally, I am pleased to share with you that you are already hard at work pushing back on the loneliness epidemic simply by being in this room, simply by engaging in the life of a religious congregation. Numerous studies show that participation in spiritual communities is associated with lower levels of social isolation and loneliness. And while it's no magic bullet, just a glimpse of our High Holy Day brochure will give you an incredible number of ways to tap in and to build connection. Join a committee, help others through our social action programs, build bonds with fellow learners during adult ed programs, schmooze with other parents or grandparents over coffee on Sunday mornings when your kids are occupied. Join a Chai Connect circle. Chai Connect circles, which we started 2 years ago, are small social groups led by fellow community members around shared interests. We have more than a dozen active Chai Connect circles and more are forming. And we have a QR code right now on the screens. If you do nothing else this year, whether in a Chai Connect circle or otherwise, find one way to engage or engage more in our Temple Chai community. It will be worth it, and you will strengthen our community as you do so. Now, if you are one of the lucky few who not only has people with whom you socialize, but you also have people who are truly close friends, with whom you can share not only your successes and joys, but also your fears, your distress, and your pain, know what a blessing you have. You may be sitting here listening to what I'm sharing and thinking that all this might not be as relevant to you. And if that's you, know that you have one of the most important jobs of all. Let this instead be my call to you. Express gratitude for this blessing in your life by bringing others into its warmth. You are uniquely positioned to open your eyes to those around you who are sitting alone, who are not yet interacting in a meeting, a class, a work lunch, at Nosh before services on a Friday evening, and give them a smile and strike up a conversation. You have the power to alleviate someone else's loneliness, and you may find yourself with a new devoted friend. On this Rosh Hashanah, as we are living through this time of deep fragmentation and tension, when online interactions and likes exceed smiles exchanged face-to-face, when we may well have thousands of Facebook friends, but not one person who we can ask to feed our cat, our tradition is calling out to us and reminding us, Lo tov heyot adam levado. It is not good for us to be alone. It is good for us to find companionship and friendship. May this year of 5,785 hold for each of us the goodness of companionship and friendship and the sweetness of camaraderie and true connection. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may this be God's will. Amen.